Good afternoon. It is a pleasure to be present at this Congress. With my communication, I will try to answer the following question: social education, an answer for dystopic social emergencies. I would like to discuss a little bit the COVID-19 pandemic as a dystopia context. In fact, we lived in a profoundly asymmetrical world that pandemic COVID-19 accentuated. Today's societies are marked by great dynamism, complexity, and unpredictability. These are the so-called risk societies, the societies of uncertainty. The pandemic has aggravated the risk, assuming unimaginable proportions in a globalized world. The speed of the virus was the speed that we moved, changing and maybe forever the way we are in the world and we interact. The pandemic also called into question the responsibilities of governments, international solidarity, active social participation of every citizen, free movement of people, family, work, relationships, as others. We are witnessing a series of profound changes in the lives of citizens, organizations, and society in general. The effects of these changes go beyond public health issues. In fact, the pandemic had negative effects in a number of areas. In terms of macro issues, apparently it seems that only the climate was likely to have been a clear beneficiary of the confinement. We know that, like other global pandemics recorded in recent history, the pandemic has a clear social dimension. So, in Portugal, the pandemic deepened already known social vulnerabilities and other weaknesses emerged, other publics to which we should respond. Social intervention played a fundamental role during the pandemic, namely through the immediate response to social needs. In this sense, we can say that the pandemic confronted social intervention with new challenges. How to guarantee support to the most disadvantaged population without putting them at risk or without putting ourselves at risk. How to guarantee this support when personal protective equipment was insufficient. How to manage the need for confinement and physical distance with the need for contact and proximity to people. How to manage to meet a growing increase in populations to be supported with the scarcity of resources. How to guarantee the promotion of empowerment and enabling intervention when professionals were called to respond to an urgent intervention. Social education was also at the forefront. The period of confinement was thus particularly challenging for social intervention, as I told you, but also for social educators, who were also faced with a reorganization of their day-to-day activities, with support for their children, with the combination of remote work, with a reduction of work or with the increase of work shifts, with the change of place where they live. In fact, many professionals in the social area have confined themselves to their own institutions in order to reduce the risk of contagion from the populations they work with. But the history of social education shows us that crises have a potential for development for this profession. In fact, social education has been consolidated in the social educational panorama, mainly due to recognition for the new demands of social intervention. So, what was the impact of the pandemic on social intervention? Here are some evidences. What we saw creative ways to establish the educational relationship, activation of the partner network, peer support, reinventation of the institutions, and local enhancement. Creative ways to establish the educational relationships. In fact, some authors focus on the concept of utopia, suggesting that social professionals should be aware of the conjugation between utopia and realism, considering it essential to let imagination fly in the search for solutions. Social educators lived up to this utopia. Social educators were able to guarantee creative ways of communicating with people, accepting the absence of visits, but maintaining the proximity that is essential in social educational intervention, with phone contacts and video calls. The pandemic allowed us to understand the importance of language and the way we communicate with people who are in situations of greater vulnerability. The contacts we established during these periods were fundamental and representative of human dignity. With the closure of day centers for seniors or homeless, for example, these contacts allowed people to feel valued and that they were not forgotten. Activation of the partner network. In social education, we know that interdisciplinarity is crucial in social educational projects, but it's not always easy. Dialogue requires accepting positions that are different from ours, but also making our point of view seen. The pandemic reinforced the need and importance of articulating and integrating different social actors and professionals, such as the community and the family members of the person with whom we are intervening, starting from a network that allows bringing the subject closer to existing services and resources. This interdisciplinarity work motivates not only the sharing of knowledge, but also the sharing of resources, common goals, and above all, the creation of a more participative and sustained support network. More than ever, networking was fundamental. At this level, there were many initiatives that emerged in civil society. Peer support. Sharing their concerns, fears, and experiences helps to combat the feeling of isolation and is essential for building resilience. During the period of confinement, social educators were able to listen and support their peers, particularly the less experienced ones. At this level, we highlight the creation of a sharing group on WhatsApp by APTEJ, Social Educators Professional Association, from which it was possible to share personal and emotional experiences related to the pandemic context. We increased the moments of team meetings through an IT platform, which allowed the discussion of cases and to search for the best solutions for complex situations. Reinvention of institutions. Institutions reinvented themselves and even with difficulties sought to ensure that necessary responses. They created effective contingency plans with a clear definition of responsibilities, with an indication of the steps to be followed, with a hierarchy of emergency levels. These plans were regularly redefined, adapting to the current characteristics and needs. Many social educators also changed the rotation and duration of their work shifts, often taking on other roles when this was necessary to ensure regular breaks or replacements, ensuring an adequate response and protecting the entire team. Many began to sleep in institutions, as I already said, in order to minimize the risk they could entail for the people they work with. We witnessed a true social commitment and a spirit of mission. Location enhancement. One of the changes accelerated by the pandemic is the strengthening of the local, the expansion of neighborhood networks favoring neighborhood businesses. Spending more time in the place allowed us to reconnect people with the place, with the creation of solidarity networks, which could be reflected in a greater demand for the quality of the public space. The impact of the pandemic on social intervention, some challenges for the present and the future. The intervention of the social education is linked and commitment to concrete territories of intervention in a logic of responsibility and action. This intervention was particularly confronted with these economic and social repercussions of the pandemic. Social educational interventions play a fundamental role in a positive change and new possibilities of pedagogical intervention based on empowering individuals to build a more solidary, democratic, and inclusive citizenship. Social education is a practice that transforms social reality. However, it must be also transformative and capable of adapting to new social reconfigurations. It is necessary to commit social education to new ways of being and doing, pointing out solutions and proposals. For this reason, social educators occupied a privileged place in the construction of new forms of social protection in which the individual is considered an active subject of their own learning due to their plurality of knowledge and proximity to individuals. Social educators work more for people than for politicians and institutions, which has to be evidenced in times of social crisis like the one we are experiencing. The challenge is then the construction of a socio-pedagogical intervention that goes beyond the imperatives of an urgent intervention and visible pedagogies, in which education and solidarity assume a central role in human development. New look at multiple differences. Has the pandemic allowed us to think about what is the value of freedom, what is the value of human dignity, what is the need to create a new conceptual framework of values? In fact, a new conception of society is needed based on more communitarian premises. The configuration of social education today cannot be disconnected from the characteristics of society marked by unpredictability, as I already said. One of the challenges facing this profession is to invest it with some activism, getting closer to people, which implies carrying out awareness, raising actions, petitions, proposals for demands with political decision makers. Another challenge is the participatory action research, PAR, methodology in their intervention context. This methodology, as the name indicates, enables an alliance between education, research, and practice based on participation on the mobilization of local resources. So it is this methodology that will enable a more reflective intervention far beyond mere technical and operative aptitude. By carrying out research and action at the heart of institutions, communities, or social organizations from the PAR, we are building a professional, reflective, and critical position with people. Another challenge is the promotion of the right work. One of the sectors most affected by the pandemic was, without doubt, work. And this is a central dimension in human life, constituting an element of socialization, identity, balance, and creation of daily rhythms. With the pandemic, we saw a bigger probability of precarious forms of employment without any stability in terms of social protection. So social education must be attentive to these audiences who are increasingly denied the right to have rights. The intervention of social educators can make a difference in promoting the right to work, participating in the redefinition of social policies and support for people in a situation of unemployment. Rethinking social protection with regards to precarious employment implies understanding that the precariousness of labor relations often implies the loss of social benefits and participation in subjects' sociability networks. Another challenge is the right to alterity. In fact, social policies tend to relegate community-based interventions to the background, prevailing the assumption that in solving problems, it is enough to change the behavior of individuals, forgetting the holistic view that they are part of a society. In social pedagogical projects, there is often a greater orientation towards the subject than towards the context that inform them. Social education cannot be detached from this scenario of insufficiency of social policies in promoting positive ways of existing as individuals, capable of making choices regarding future projects and developing personal strategies. Social educator position is not compatible with the neutrality and impersonality of watertight social interventions. So, by considering subjects as active citizens and not just as assisted, social education has the role of launching new ways of rethinking social protection based on an ethical, humanizing, inclusive, and democratic platform. Social protection must be supported by a right to alterity, which understands the nature of social ties and places the participation of individuals in their communities at the center of social intervention. Bigger attention to potentialities. Social intervention in a context of crisis should start not so much from the needs, but more from the potentialities. This is the starting point for the growth and improvement of people, because potentialities can be a starting point for self-construction. Social education will contribute to the development of projects oriented towards citizenship through integral dialogic and social education that guarantees the active participation of the individual in the community and protagonism in their life projects. In fact, education commits us to a better future. It raises awareness of rights and duties, empowering individuals in lifelong education. At last, another challenge is the lifelong training as a form of permanent knowledge recycling. Social education is learned in direct contact with social educational realities, which requires constant socialization. The social educator is trained in a professional practice. The importance given to lifelong education is largely justified by the characteristics of society that place new demands on knowledge and know-how. It is about building a professional who is able to design their own strategies for the knowledge of reality and subjects. Never, as today, has there been so much appeal to the capacity for the generative learning, one that is based on different thinking and the search for unconventional solutions. Thank you so much for your time. Here is some contact. If you have some doubts, please feel free to contact me. Thank you very much.